Who's ready, Bills Mafia? It's the Bills Squad, sponsored by Gametime. Everything Buffalo Bills, every week. Breaking down the big hits and game-changing plays the way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. So gear up and squad up. The Bills Squad show starts now.
And hello, welcome back, Bills Mafia. This is the Bills Squad. Jeremy White, Joe Marino, and Jerry Ostroski. We're efforting Joe. We're working on it. We're trying to make it happen. You know, this is the time for spotty Wi-Fi sometimes, spotty signals, but whatever. Joe's going to join us when he can get a chance to jump in. But in the meantime, we are here hanging out, ready to talk Bills. We've got a big, juicy story in the James Cook saga, which we thought might have been kind of buried. It's back. He has now missed 2 straight practices, and I had a chance to sit down with the GM, Brandon Beane, to talk about it today on where they all stand. So we'll get to Cook. We'll get to all the injuries because they are piling up, lots and lots of injuries. So plenty to get to here, including your questions, your comments, anything we need to cover on this episode of the Bill Squad Show. Today's episode brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Of course, joining me, former Buffalo Bill, Jerry Ostroski, 100 starts, played all over the offensive line. And I thought of a new title I want to give you, Jerry.
Oh, boy.
Just so you know. Ready?
Yeah.
I love that whenever we bring up an injury, you're able to just tell us, that's fine. That's tough. You know, last show, it was Alec Anderson, knee scope week to week, and you just drop probably this. He'd play if he could. So you're the go-to on the injuries and, you know, how long a guy should miss.
Hey, I'm trying not to be the next, inside. We got a couple guys that do a great job with injuries and stuff. But no, it just so happens. I mean, you play long enough, you understand because you've been through it.
Yeah.
And then add to the fact that I was in the medical device world, we went to many, many training sessions over that stuff. So yeah, I mean, it's something that's interesting and I know a little bit about.
Yeah. Yeah, and Joe was telling a story a couple of weeks ago. He met a woman that had the same injury as you and kind of saw you as inspiring because of that. So, you know, injuries in football, they go hand in hand. Well, anyway, all right. So here we are. James Cook has transitioned to a new phase of being upset. And, this whole thing, Jerry, so Sunday, the Bills are practicing. Maybe you guys out there are kind of like me where I think Sunday I'm off, everybody must be off. But that's not true. The Bills are practicing on a Sunday, and lo and behold, James Cook's in street clothes. Okay, that's interesting. He's walking with the trainer, and you might think, veteran rest day, something happened. That's nothing. Alana Getzenberg of ESPN asks him, why'd you miss practice? And his answer was, business. How about tomorrow? Business. And pretty much left it right there.
Right.
And with that began okay, what's going to happen now with James Cook? We waited today. He shows up at practice. Again, I guess you would call this business. So happy Holden. We thought we might get one of these. We just had to wait 8 practices. He started, and here we are.
Interesting that it happened shortly after the Micah Parsons situation. It was I thought the timing was pretty interesting. I don't know. I get it. It's part of the business. And if you believe what Tom Pelissero had to say and the fact that their negotiations are much closer than people think, and they've been talking, you have to look as a player, if you put yourself out there, especially this camp. I mean, it's not about who's on the injury list. It's about who's not on the injury list, right? I mean, everybody seems to have been on there at one point or another. And, you have to maybe protect yourself. And so if the talks, I could see it, if the negotiations are really as close as it's been alluded to, then maybe there's a little bit of strategic, thinking behind this. But if you're just doing it because you're a copycat of somebody else that did it, I'm not necessarily down with that. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how far he takes this, because if the Bills are, and Brandon Beane was on with you this morning, and, the thing that was interesting to me was they had no idea it was coming, right?
Yep.
They were shocked just like the rest of us. So if they really are as close as it's being alluded to, maybe Cook and his side thinks that this is the last little bit to get it over the top and get what they want. But at this point in camp, before we play the Giants this weekend, I'm not stressed about it. If we're still sitting in and we're a week away from the start of the season, then it becomes maybe a concern.
Yeah. It's just so not in the normal playbook, right? He could have demanded a trade. He could have decided to do this at the start of camp. He could have done a number of things. And that's where trying to read between the lines here, like as you alluded to, Tom Pelissero reported that this is not a significant breakdown. And then I'm talking to Brandon Beane, and he says they were not aware that this was going to happen. It was kind of a surprise. Cook's going to start something out. To me, that alone indicates there's got to be a breakdown because you've been constant communication, in contact, the Bills and the agent and Cook, and then all of a sudden there's a surprise maneuver that's got to be seen as some breakdown from the Bills.
Exactly, and maybe that was the tipping point, right? And you just alluded to it. The fact that they thought they were close and then they knew they couldn't get to where they wanted to be. So now they went to the next level, which is the sit-in. So, yeah, especially for Brandon Beane, who has stressed the last month or even longer that the communication lines have been open and there's been great communication. Then a player goes and does something and you don't know anything about it. Obviously, that communication, like you said, has been broken down and things have changed. So, again, sit in, sit out, do whatever you want. It doesn't change the situation. The Bills still have all the leverage in this negotiation. And again, the best play for James Cook is to show that he can work through it. He can mentally get it done. He can mentally show up and play knowing that this contract situation's in the back of his mind and put it on film because he's going to have to put it on film.
Yeah. He'll get the leverage at the end of the year. As soon as this year is in the books, like no matter how he plays, if he plays well, if he plays poorly, he's going to get the leverage because then he becomes an unrestricted free agent. And it's like, all right, go to market. And even though the franchise tag is something the Bills could use, I just don't see them doing that really in any scenario. So, because that's a $15 million cap hit, that gets really tough for the GM. For a GM that's near the cap and massaging salaries, you just don't want to do that with a franchise tag. I'll get you some of the quotes here from Beane and what he said with us this morning on WGR. So it was last night. I'll give you the timeline. Yesterday, we find out Cook misses practice. I knew we were going to talk to the GM someday this week, either today or Wednesday or Thursday. And I got the message from Bill's PR. It'll be Monday, 7:30 a.m. Like, okay. So we get the first crack at the GM on what's going on. And, he's got to walk a line, right, Jerry? He's got to not burn bridges. He's the voice of the team. And mixed into all that, he does say, I wish we weren't here. We tried to get something done. We'll try again. It takes two. One thing that I think Bills fans should not dismiss is that they want him. They want this player. Every player is going to have a price except for quarterbacks. Quarterbacks have no price. But they do want him. So I always feel like I got to point that out because if you're someone, and I'm sure many in the chat will say, get rid of him. He's not worth anything. I want to see that same energy when he signs, if he does, because they want him back. They see value here, and I think they should see value here. He's a good player for them. The question is, can they find their way to an agreement for the money? And I don't know, Jerry, like how often is it that you are finding yourself understanding a player that has like no safety net and he wants that contract? The idea of, just play it out. Like, well, what if I, destroy my knee? It seems like a pretty big risk and not something that the normal person in their life is ever asked to do. Like risk your entire livelihood just for one more year before you're going to get paid what you're worth.
Exactly. I think that, James Cook is set to make $5.2 million this year. And while we all know that's a lot of money in the world that he's in and what he's doing, he is worth much more than $5.2 million. He is. But he's on the fourth year of his rookie contract. It's just the way it goes. And you're 100% correct. I mean, there's a little bit of luck. I shouldn't say a little bit. There's a lot of luck that goes into these situations with players. Can you stay healthy? Can you stay viable? Is your availability there? And there is a risk of playing it out. There always is. But you see points across the league all the time, Jeremy, of guys that, they play a season and have no issues, or they go out and they get an injury and next thing you know, their career starts tumbling. So yeah, there is a lot of risk. I understand the James Cook side of this thing. I really do. I think that as a player, you're empathetic to what he's going through. But unfortunately for him, two things go against him. One, the contract and the fact that it is what it is, and they don't have to do anything. And the other point about this is, too, I think James Cook gets handcuffed a lot in negotiations because of who we have at quarterback. I think we're pretty understanding, and we've seen it now throughout his career. If James Cook, while it would hurt, if James Cook didn't play, that wouldn't be ideal, but we still got 17, right?
Yeah.
And I think in the back of Brandon Beane's mind and in Sean McDermott's mind and Terry Bagula's mind, we've still got that guy. And quarterback-driven league it is. And so I think that goes against his negotiations a little bit as well, Jeremy.
Well, I've got this. Sometimes I'll be thinking about talking about the Bills, and I've got this thought in my head about the Cook conversation. To me, is a lot like the conversation about the Bills in their playoff wins and losses. And what I mean is this: should you pay a running back $20 million? Probably not. Should you pay James Cook 13? You probably don't need to. You'll probably win 13, 14 games either way. Like, that's the macro, right? I don't need James Cook. I'm going to win 13 games no matter what. And we feel that way about the Bills and Josh Allen. That's how it goes. The micro, though. What about the game against the Chiefs where I need every single inch I can ever get? I need every yard over expected. I need every dog play I can get. And while I know he doesn't give you the pass blocking, we've gone over that AFC Championship game. He's their best player outside of Allen. He made a difference for them. He gets a 4th and 1 touchdown. And while you could kind of look at the spreadsheets, and I'm a fan of those, about value of running back and what you should pay and this and this and this, the Bills are not operating, to me, in the every decision has to be the smartest and pass every test. What they're operating in, for me, is every edge. They have to find every one, because to finally cross that finish line and beat the Chiefs, it might be because you gambled a little bit much. You spend a little bit more than you meant to, because we're talking about just the smallest differences. And that's where I think Cook does make a difference for them.
Oh, definitely. I think that our running game takes a step backwards if James Cook's not on the field, because of the way we run zone, the way our offensive line plays. He is tremendously comfortable behind that group and does a great job. And when you look at Cook, the interesting thing is, and I can't remember where I heard this, and I don't know if it was on your show, Joe, or Jeremy with you and Brandon Beane, but you got to remember, James Cook was brought in as, what I think it was you, Joe, that said this, a sub back. I mean, he didn't even start on his college team, right? He was the second guy. And we bring him in as kind of that sub back, that third down piece. And next thing you know, lo and behold, he turns into a tremendous zone runner. It was a really good pick by Beane, because you look at him, didn't have the mileage because he wasn't a starter, ends up developing into this great back. So if he's not on this roster, we don't have another guy in that room that runs zone the way he does. So there would be a step back in that aspect. Now, does that mean that our offense would not be successful? No, I think it would be, because we just talked about it. Josh Allen takes snaps, and Ray Davis does a lot of good things. Ty Johnson does a lot of good things. Now, they probably have to go out and try and find another guy to maybe fit that more traditional zone running back role. But no, I mean, this is a guy you need on the field. It's just all the pieces of this whole negotiation, how it goes, there's just really nothing flows or meshes. It's just very chunky.
Yeah. Welcoming in Mr. Joe Marino. He made it. He's here. Joe, howdy.
Howdy, guys. Hopefully the internet holds up for me. It's been a battle here for the last couple of hours, but I think we may have turned the corner. And sorry to be a little bit late, but good to be here.
So what are you in, the Catskills, the Catamounts, the Adirondacks? What mountain chain are you in?
The Blue Ridge Mountains here of North Carolina, Blowing Rock, North Carolina. Just, I guess, kind of near Boone, but
all right,
a little down the beaten path.
Before we get to a break, Joe, quick thought on Cook and the developments of today. A second day now, not practicing. And we have actually more from Brandon Beane to dig into, but I know you listened to what he had to say about it all.
It's a really unusual circumstance with, on day 9 of training camp, him deciding to have this hold in. And it's just, the timing just feels really, really unusual to me. And I just don't know what the resolution is going to be. I don't think that this is going to be the moment where the Bills say, you know what, we haven't been willing to meet your contract demands, but now that you're holding in, we're going to. I think there's a discrepancy. My thought on this, guys, the Bills need to go ahead and give James Cook permission to seek a trade. I'm not saying that they should trade him, but I think they got to put him out there so that he can gauge what his actual valuation is and understand the money he's looking for isn't there for him. And I think the only way to discover that at this point is by letting him seek that trade and find out, and then we can have a reasonable conversation about what the appropriate amount of money is to give him on a new deal.
Yeah. The old, if you love something, set it free. And if it's meant to be, give Cook an opportunity to, you want to ask all those GMs, you want to ask them what they'd be willing to pay you on an extension. Just ask them all and let us know what they said.
Who's going to do it? Dallas? Dallas can't get a deal done with anybody.
They can't, but I was going to bring that up. That's the interesting point of this, right? You got the Micah Parsons side and the fan base clamoring to go out and get Micah Parsons because they feel that one guy is going to set him over the top. I'm not one of those dudes that believes one player, unless he's a quarterback, does that. You've got to have a good football team. And then Brandon Beane talked about it today. Yeah, that's great. We can fit him in 2025, but what about 26 and 27? I got to pay offensive linemen. He kind of laid it out there, and I thought Joe DiBiase, that was a great question he asked this morning. But it was one of those deals where they do need a running back in Dallas.
Yeah,
they need one, and for all intents and purposes, we need a pass rushing specialist. So that story in itself has been written, and I find very interesting.
There's no way at 26 years old, Micah Parsons is getting out of Dallas. Now it's messy. It's messy, and Jerry Jones has flopped every step of this negotiation. This should have been done last year. And if it was done last year, you're talking about a mid-30s APY deal. Now it's going to be mid-40s because Jerry Jones wants to drag this out, and eventually he's going to throw money at it and make it go away. But I don't think he's getting out of Dallas, and I don't think that Dallas is in a position where they're going to be able to get a deal done with James Cook if that was part of a deal. The other team that makes sense is Washington, and they got their own problems with Terry McLaurin. I think actually James Cook will be a great fit for Washington and what they want to be offensively. But ultimately, I think this is just has to play itself out. And I don't think James Cook is going to get that money that he's looking for, that appears he's demanding in Buffalo.
Real quick, Jeremy, real quick. And the thing about what Micah Parsons has done in Dallas and why that is going to work as opposed to what James Cook is doing, everybody knows when you publicly shame Jerry Jones and tell him he can't do something, his ego takes over and he does it, right? Whether it kills him or not, he's going to do it. And I think that's why that's going to work in Dallas, and he's not going to get out of Dallas. But where the James Cook situation, and I love what Brandon Beane has done. He's never publicly said anything is derogatory or anything else. Just, hey, we want him here. We love Jimbo. That is his number one quote throughout this offseason. And I think that's what sets him aside from other general managers. I appreciate that style and what he does when talking about tough negotiations with players on his roster.
All right. Lots more to get to because there was another part of what Beane had to say about Cook and what he brings the team. I want to ask you guys, how far down the road we should be considering if he's not going to play, if he's going to miss some time. So we'll get to that when we return. Full squad here. Jeremy White, Joe Marino, Jerry Ostroski. That next piece from Beane when we return. Hey, time to fuel up and turn it up with a 5-hour energy transfusion. That's right. The bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink. A transfusion on the golf course. It's iconic. It's, it's what you're supposed to have out there, a transfusion. And how about a 5-hour energy flavor that is a transfusion? It's as simple as this. You pop them a transfusion and you get, that little focus on the course. Minus the alcohol, quick, energizing shot. Some days on the course, you might need that extra boost. You see that shot this weekend? The woman who hit it onto the green, off another ball, and into the hole. Maybe 5-hour energy makes that kind of shot possible. I don't know. Take a rip at it. But if anyone in your group has ever pulled off a ridiculous bet or a ridiculous shot, maybe they're helping themselves with a 5-hour energy. Golf's all about good times, good people, good flavors, of course. The grape ginger lime flavor gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without chasing down the beverage cart. So if you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that's the number 5. ourenergy.com. You can use my promo code LOCKEDONGolf to receive 20% off your order. The offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Okay, so the thing I wanted to get to, guys, that was another part of what Brandon Beane had to say. He started talking about Cook and the kind of back he was. Joe was asking all the way back to his Georgia days. Like, when you scouted him, what were you getting out of this player? And I think part of the story is that he's grown into more than a lot of people thought. And Beane was talking about how when he's in the backfield, it's a little tougher to know what they want to do with the ball. And that's where, while James Cook is not the perfect back, I don't think anybody would say that. He isn't Saquon, he isn't Derrick Henry, but he does give the Bills an awful lot of flexibility. He's a good pass catcher, good enough, maybe not the best on the team. He's a breakaway threat. The way he fits their run scheme, if in fact he were to miss time, would it and how difficult would it make it for the offense to function at full strength like they would want to? Because it seemed like Beane was kind of admitting that, listen, he's definitely the guy on this team. He gives us a lot of options.
I think the offense would be missing an important element of the run game and the zone-oriented attack that they have, and how good James Cook is with that vision in the hole and how that leads to explosive plays. I mean, the dude has grown, and yeah, I think we all thought of James Cook as a guy that was best as a pass-catching back and maybe a specialized player, but like a lot of guys, they get more opportunity and that unlocks more of their skill set, and you can appreciate more of what a player brings to a team. And so I don't hold that against James Cook, that he wasn't this player coming out and they didn't draft him to become what he became. He did. That's a great story of player development. And I'm not necessarily advocating for the Bills meeting his demands, but I also can acknowledge that this offense is optimized to have James Cook as part of it, and they wouldn't be as good. I mean, the Bills offense is efficient. It's not explosive. And James Cook is the most explosive thing that this offense has. Now, we certainly hope that could be a little bit different this year with some of the new pieces. But the guy that gave the explosive plays of this offense was James Cook, and that'd be a big piece missing.
No, I agree 100%. It almost would lead me to believe, does Aaron Kromer change the way they block up front a little bit if James Cook is not part of this offense? Because the way this Bills offensive line works, we talked a little bit about it last week. I used the term duo. They're not a true blue duo type zone running team, which is forcing double teams, moving bodies back north and south. Okay, they are more of that lateral team that they're not going to spend a bunch of time on a double team. If the guy leaves them, they're gone. And it's more of a be patient and let the line wash guys horizontally. Then that back he's hesitating in the backfield and then goes, where a guy like Ray Davis is so downhill, his cuts are happening at the line of scrimmage or a yard or so past the line of scrimmage. So if you don't have James Cook on this team, if I'm Aaron Kromer, I start looking maybe at how I changed my blocking up front to where it's more of a quick hitter type offensive line in the running game, as opposed to that kind of amoeba type thing. When I say amoeba, it's kind of slowly flowing right and left. So you'd have to really start looking at how you change things up front if Cook's not a part of this.
Yeah, like take us through that. Like that I don't know that people would think that. People think running backs are just strictly plug and play. Anybody goes in. We got a comment here from Vroom that Cook benefited from the O-line more than any other back in the league. And I don't think that that's true. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to look at that, guys. I've got yards before contact per attempt here. And Saquon Barkley is at 3.8 yards before contact per attempt. James Cook's at 2.6. Like, sometimes I feel like we're too focused on, well, the line is good, so I don't need my back to be good. What you want is both, right?
Sure.
And putting that puzzle together is what a GM does. So if you take out this Cook puzzle piece, what you're kind of talking about sounds drastic for what would change on the offensive line and the run fronts.
Oh, I believe so. I just, if you look at the way they run things, they don't run a ton of power. They don't run power. They don't run counter. They run what they call dart, which is that single tackle pull scheme that they run. And again, what Kromer does up front is create movement through flow. Everything is a flow, right and left. It's a lateral type of thing. And, Joe and I have talked about it in the past. The hardest block in the way they block is the backside cutoff of the tackle, because the guards don't spend a lot of time posting or helping with that 3 technique, that they're just gone up to the backer if that guy doesn't come to them. And there's a lot of that goes on, and you create movement by being athletic. And your backs have to fit how that goes. And if you watch, how many times have we seen Cook take a handoff and within a half a step, he's kind of hesitating. He's sitting there. Then he's back behind it. We saw numbers where Cook ran weak. When I say weak, that's the backside of things. He ran weak more than any back in the league last year. And there's a reason why. That's what he sees. That's what he does. And so to go to just say, hey, we're not going to sign him. I don't care if he plays. Ray Davis starts. Well, if you watch Ray, he's downhill. So he doesn't have the patience that Cook has. So while Cook is hesitating, then gets back behind it, Ray's probably running into guys because he's not letting it set up. So there's a way that these running schemes all fit the style of the back. And if you go to a Ray Davis, you better start forcing doubles, maybe even going to some power to where he can get downhill and put his foot in the ground and go. And it's just different. And there's a lot more that goes into it than just saying, hey, the O-line's great, so anybody back there works. No, that's not the way it is.
Cromer has even talked about this during his time with the Saints when they had some very complimentary backs. I think he had maybe Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara at the same time. And I've listened to him talk about, we had to block differently for different backs to optimize what they do. And I think that's what a good coaching staff does. So yes, the run scheme is optimized for James Cook. There's no question about it. Like Jerry talked about, the wide zone, the cutback zone. He's really mastered those types of runs, and where Ray Davis is much more of a straight downhill type player and is going to thrive more in gap schemes. So you could adjust. And I think the offensive line would be just fine adjusting to that style. But this has been part of the appeal of what's going on is you have 2 years of continuity basically with this infrastructure in place that is in place for what James Cook does best. And so you can adjust on the fly. You have to, but certainly there would be some adjustments. And there's, we talk about how the play action game has to be married to the run schemes, and like all of this is intertwined. And so now you have to wonder what that looks like in, the different protection schemes that exist. How does that evolve with different backs in place? So there are adjustments, and I expect an NFL team to be able to figure that out, but they would have to adjust quite a bit to how they run the ball and what that means for the play action game if it winds up being a situation where James Cook's not part of this mix in 2025.
And real quick, I think the biggest misconception for people that are watching is everybody hears wide zone and they think that the ball's going to hit outside the front side tackle, outside the front side tight end, which sometimes in some cases it does. But in James Cook's case, a lot of times, and most of the time, the wide zone cuts back behind where before the snap of the ball, where the center's lined up. If they're going right wide zone where the center's lined up and the left guard is lined up, that's where it goes. So just because it's considered wide zone does not mean it's like sweep. Okay, so if you want to differentiate, if you're trying to attack the outside C gap, no matter what, you're going to run which more like a sweep type play. Wide zone can hit anywhere. So don't think that just because we run wide zone means it's an outside play. That's not the case. Wide zone really kind of is indicative of the style of the O-line blocking up front as opposed to forcing the ball to hit a certain spot outside.
And Jerry, when they do run those more crack toss is what the Bills will do with their sweeps. Ty Johnson gets the ball on those runs.
Right.
So it
varies
why? Based on back.
And why? Because when he gets the ball, he's going.
He goes. Right.
He goes.
James is more of a feel. He's a nuanced runner with really dynamic footwork, and that vision in the hole is what I think sets him apart as a player, where Ty Johnson's got really good speed, but hey, just get the ball and go. That's going to be a run that's tailored better for Ty Johnson versus James Cook. He certainly has the quickness to win the edge, but you're kind of taking away from what makes him really special.
There's also probably a formula here. Any old, hey, the running back's out, next man up. If you're a team with a bell cow and then the second guy becomes the bell cow, that's your drop off. For the Bills, you're kind of talking James Cook to Darrington Evans, right? And this team uses all three backs. So if Cook is out of the picture because he's sitting out or whatever, he's gone. I still am using three backs. I mean, is Darrington Evans the guy that's coming up? It's not going to be Frank Gore Jr., right? Like all of a sudden, we're talking about how it's going to affect the run game and how now I want to ask you guys about this, like using three backs. Joe, I know your episode was about the one I listened to today was about the backs in the passing game. And to take that number from 3 to 2, that you trust. I don't know how you feel about Darrington Evans, but I'm trying to basically illustrate how the tentacles of Cook are just more than about just one player.
I'm glad you brought up Darrington Evans because he's been on the Bills, I think, 4 different times. He's part of this offseason equation. He's back in the mix. And last year, he had, I think it was a hamstring injury, and the Bills actually put him on injured reserve on cutdown day and designated him to return. You only can bring back, I think it's either 6 or 8 players. I think it might be 6. You can only bring back 6 players from injured reserve. And they committed 1 to Darrington Evans. Now, the problem is they got to the point where it's time to bring Darrington Evans back, and there wasn't a pathway to get him on the roster because you're not going to roster 4 backs. But the Bills do like Darrington Evans. And I think Darrington Evans gives you the explosive elements that James Cook offers. But the problem with Darrington Evans is you don't get the same level of nuance. Yeah, you get speed, but speed only matters so much in the NFL. You have to have the football elements with it. And, Darrington Evans, 4 stints with the Bills. I think he's had 3 stints with the Bears, multiple stints with maybe Miami and Tennessee. Like, there's a reason that this guy hasn't been able to really lock down a spot. So I think he becomes part of the mix, but in a smaller capacity when, you want to try to get some explosive runs. But if it's a 50-25-25 split right now, I don't think Darrington Evans is going to come close to touching that 25. I think he's probably more of a 10% type player.
And you probably go back to like a Latavius Murray type situation where you go try to find a veteran back that that you can put on the field in third down that understands how to pass pro, and you can get some zone runs out of him, and you bring him in as a 1-year rental. I think that's probably more the way that the Bills would handle it if Cook is not available than maybe the Darrington Evans and just relying on 2 backs. You got to bring somebody in that you can has experience, you've seen him do it, and you can rely on him a little bit.
One more little domino effect here. Could it at all work that the injuries they're suffering all over the field, and particularly at receiver? Like right now, Palmer's nursing a groin injury. Curtis Samuel, I mean, it's like he's not on the team.
Is he alive?
Right. Like the hamstring injury forever. Shakir, high ankle sprain. Like this is a team that has a great offense, no doubt. Like quarterback's amazing, line's amazing, coordinator, like they got things going. If there's something that they lean on more than other teams, it is the running back in the passing game, right? Like they do it a lot. And I'm starting to wonder if, no James Cook, and just add him to the pile of players that are seemingly going down. I'm not trying to, paint doom and gloom. I think they're still going to win a million games, but it's just, I don't know, Jerry, it feels like it's getting thin all of a sudden offensively with the number of now issues that are rising up.
Well, that's been one of my biggest questions that I've been trying to think through is why now, right? He's done all the things he's supposed to do, right? Everything that's mandatory he's done. Why on day 9 of training camp did James Cook say this is the moment where, I'm going to do something? And it feels like the injuries have to be part of that decision for him, because what else is different? What else has happened? Is it really just giving HBO a cliffhanger for Tuesday night? I don't think it's that. Come on now. I think it's leveraging the injuries to maybe get the Bills to budge, because nothing else makes sense.
That, or the fact that the communication that we've heard about being so good, and then Brandon Beane talks about it this morning, that they had no idea that he was going to sit in. Maybe the negotiation is stalled again, and this is the next move to try to, jostle, the rest of the money that he wants loose.
Well, I mean, communication can be good, and it doesn't mean that everybody likes what's being said. So I don't doubt that there's been good communication, but I think this is James Cook's okay, we've talked, you told me your numbers, I've told you mine, we're not close. Doesn't mean that communication's been bad, but hey, the next thing that I'm going to do to communicate to you is I'm not going to practice on day 9 and day 10 of training camp.
Right.
I've seen some commentary out there that's like, well, how great is this communication if they didn't even know he was going to practice? Well, that's James Cook's next. I mean, it's negotiating. That's his next move.
Yeah. And to kind of answer real quick, Jeremy, to answer a little bit of what you just talked about with the injuries being a factor and all these receivers, that's what makes this whole James Cook thing to me, I don't want to say nerve-wracking, but unsettling, because the Bills do have the ability to absorb some of that early in the season. The 2 answers are a lot of James Cook, and by all indications, what we've seen, a much more improved, better Dalton Kincaid. So Dalton Kincaid's been at, other than one day of practice, has been out there. those two guys are going to have to suck up a lot of what we would miss at receiver until these guys get healthy if they're not available week one. And now Cook sitting out, that concerns me more than anything, because I see him as a major factor of being able to absorb some injury early as we move into the season.
Bill Squad Show, Jeremy White, Joe Marino, Jerry Ostroski. When we get back, we get some takeaways on the Battle of the Blue and Red that happened at the stadium. We're going to get an honest-to-goodness preseason game this week as well. The preseason, the NFL is about to get going in full throat. So get a break in. And when we return, the blue and red and all these injuries, there's so many to get to, some more concerning than others. We're going to talk about timelines for some of these young players and second-year players. It's coming up next on the Bill Squad Show. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day. You suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. Well, the way to do that is to use the Gametime app. That's right. Gametime can help you be in the stands for these games. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merchandise, maybe get a bigger group to go with you. Gametime makes it possible. Gametime makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch, if it's a baseball game, and incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. So, Gametime, the official ticketing partner of Locked On MLB, making it easy to browse the app for an exciting upcoming Major League Baseball game. Maybe you want something for the Yankees or something. Tired of endless scrolling, trying to find the best deal? Gametime's zone deals pick the best seats in the section for you. And seat views right there on the app. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, gentlemen, the injuries. Holy cow. The good news is, well, it's tough to keep track of who's in and who's out. Taylor Rapp was back in. Cole Bishop might be back soon. Like the two safeties, I want to start there because I'm kind of just triggered for last year where the safety position felt like it never got off the ground the way that it needed to. And Cole Bishop is, he got dinged. He had a quad issue. Like we're approaching injury prone there. It's just, there are certain spots I feel like that are, Joe, that are sore spots when it comes to recurring injuries.
Yeah, there's a number of them, and you start to wonder, what's severe? What do we actually have to be worried about? Obviously, Khalil Shakir, high ankle sprain. You don't love that. It feels like Bishop's the one that's bugging me the most right now, though, with this quad. The guy needs reps. And when you kind of go through the journey so far, you miss all the time in camp and preseason last year, and then misses some time during the OTAs, and now this. He's young, and there's plenty of time for this to maybe switch. I remember a young Matt Milano, a young Taron Johnson, thinking those guys were banged up quite a bit. But Bishop really needs to be out there, and he's a guy that every indication is that it's him and Taylor Rapp. I mean, they're joined at the hip, and Damar Hamlin's definitely the third guy. But Bishop's that one right now that I find myself most annoyed with, because I think a lot of them are just mostly annoying. But I want to see him on the field.
Definitely. I think Bishop's a guy. I mean, we got good news from Brandon Beane this morning when he was on with Jeremy, saying that this isn't like the injury he had last year where we're not talking a month. It's, they could possibly get him back by the end of the week, but more than likely shooting for that Bears game the second week of the preseason. But yeah, I agree. And when you look at these battles, I was asked the other day, what are you looking for in this first preseason game? There's really only a couple spots, honestly, that there's battles. I guess you could say that even a safety spot, if Bishop's healthy, I mean, this is a Rapp Bishop show. You've talked about it all the time, Joe, that you could just see that this is what they want. Can Derek Forrest be a guy that takes over for Damar Hamlin? I don't know. Like I said, I think Hamlin's one of those guys that is going to be here. He's like a cockroach, man. You can do whatever you want. He's not going anywhere. And I think that's great to have on this team. But when I look at all these different areas that there might be battles, really, this is training camp and preseason games is to see who you're going to bring back for the 10 practice squad players. Honestly, I don't see maybe the backup quarterback battle. Maybe you look at cornerback and you look at you look at Jamarcus Ingram and Dane Jackson. Maybe that's other than a couple key backup battles, really this is young guys trying to prove they deserve to be on the practice squad to me.
A lot of missing players. Of course, we've gone over Cook at a great length. Cedric Van Pran, Granger, Alec Anderson on the offensive line. Anderson, we knew he's week to week after having a knee procedure. Does Cedric Van Pran, Granger get into a bit of a sticky spot here if he's not able to really be a part of this team?
100%. I think the Bills would have loved to seen more of him, obviously, so far in camp to get an idea of where he's at and if he can be a viable successor for Connor McGovern. And when you look at the team, they worked out a bunch of interior offensive linemen yesterday. They actually just signed Dan Feeney. Dan Feeney's a 65-game starter in the NFL. That's not a nobody in the middle of camp. That's a guy with some pedigree. And the fact that Van Pran Granger has not practiced yet in camp, and now they've done this, in addition to, of course, Anderson's situation, but we feel good about where that's going to head. I get a level of concern about Van Pran Granger and where he's at since they brought in Feeney.
I think it is interesting with this offensive line, and I'm going to have Greg Thompson on this week on my show, but it's almost like Cromer gets his guys, and it's a succession of development and moving into spots. He has his guys. He knows what they can do. He develops them, and as guys leave or guys get hurt, he moves the next dudes into spots. And we have some areas, the David Edwards situation. Does McGovern become the odd man out with all these contracts that are up? And, I think that Van Pran Granger is one of those guys. And for him to not be available, it's hard to see him slide into a spot if he's not practicing.
It's funny. I got a chance to catch up with Coach Cromer last week. And the question I wanted to ask him, and I asked him as quick as I could, I said, Coach, you ever had this many guys back, like your top 9 from last year all back? And I expected him to say something like, no, this is extremely weird. He goes, not really. He's like, once I'm somewhere long enough, usually my guys stick around and we come up with a good plan. And so I think he's pretty excited about where this group is going. But, man, you'd like to see some of these young guys available, because I do think they're looking at some of these guys to succeed, whether that is an Edwards or a McGovern. And this is kind of their best opportunity, because hopefully they don't play at all during the season.
Right.
Listing out all these players that are not practicing, it doesn't even fit in one little screen. Like if you're watching this on YouTube, I only have so many characters. I had to make a continued on the next page. Cedric Van Pran Granger, Alec Anderson, Curtis Samuel, Khalil Shakir, Caden Prather, Tyler Bass, Deion Walker, Dorian Williams, Shaq Thompson, Taron Johnson, Dane Jackson, Cole Bishop, Maxwell Harrison, and Tyler Bass. And, we got to the offensive line there. The other one, Joe, we kind of got to it quickly. And Jerry, Curtis Samuel, like this is almost at if he didn't have a contract, is he here? Right? Like, and I mean, just not a cap hit is really what I'm getting at here. If they could unload him, they might want to, because he's not healthy. He can't stay on the field. He had a turf toe last year. This time it's a hamstring. And as we were trying to figure out the numbers in the receiver room on our 53-man projection, Joe, we were talking about, special teams, who can do that. I just heard Sean McDermott talking about Christian Wilkerson playing special teams, and Tyrell Shavers, maybe Jalen Virgil has done it. So I don't know if you think there's any real worry here for Curtis Samuel, if it's sunk cost that they have to keep him because he's got the contract. But man, it's frustrating to see him just again not available, which was something that he did come with, was this warning.
Yeah. Well, everything in Buffalo's earned, right? What is Curtis Samuel doing right now to earn not only a roster spot, but a role in this offense? Nothing. He's not doing anything. And obviously the contract makes this very sticky, but ultimately you're going to roster players that can help your football team. And as I feel like I've talked about for months, right now, the makeup of this wide receiver room, based on the 5 players that everyone expected them to keep, it didn't present the options necessary for special teams. And 82, like you mentioned, Christian Wilkerson, he's getting a lot of first-team reps. Now, of course, a lot of that's because they're down so many receivers, but when you layer together first-team reps, making some plays, has special teams upside, that's going to be more valuable than Curtis Samuel, who, if healthy, can occasionally be an X factor. There's more snaps to play. If Curtis Samuel's healthy, he might play 8 to 12 snaps of offense. That's it. If Christian Wilkerson or Jalen Virgil or whatever receiver like that is available, they're going to play 20 to 30 special team snaps a game, and probably more offense, because then you believe in them as a blocker. And some of your bunch sets, your tight alignment type stuff, what they did with Matt Collins, they love to play some of these receivers closer, have them dig out guys in the run game. And so there's a lot more roster value in some of these lesser known players because of what they're going to give on teams and in a non-specialized role offensively where they can do some of that dirty work, where if Curtis Samuel's on the field, we know what happens. Little quick passes hopefully can turn into something. There's just not enough value there, and obviously the contract's sticky, but I think we have to start looking at it like this a little bit.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think Curtis Samuel's health, and I also think what they do with Maxwell Hairston, maybe how they maneuver those two guys with IR or whatever as we move on, is that the avenue then that allows Ava Laviska, Chenault, and the others to come on, and that's where your spot of your return guy is.
Be interesting to watch. We have our first preseason game coming up at the end of the week. The Bills will play the New York Giants, and we'll see how much time the ones get, how much time Josh Allen gets, if any, in this game. I saw the Falcons, neither Michael Penix Jr. nor Kirk Cousins are playing in their first game. And, charting what they've done over the years, there have been some years where Allen plays a lot, some where he plays a couple snaps. That can also be based on the joint practice, which is coming up with the Bears next week. So you guys have a feel for what you'd like to see there? There are some chemistry points to make for Josh Palmer or one of these other receivers we made. Like, do you want to see Allen out there at all for live reps in the preseason?
How much do you think about, and boy, I can't wait to hear Jerry talk about this. How much do you guys think about the last three openers? Arizona, they had to come back at the end. They started flat. Remember that first drive of the year was a turnover. That was not ominous, huh? I was like, here we go, Josh Allen with this goofy turnover to start the season. They got lost to the Zach Wilson Jets, and then was it the Steelers? That Steelers.
A couple of years ago, yeah.
Like the last three openers have not been the Bills playing their best ball, and whatever, you don't want to peak in week one, but you'd certainly like to play a little bit better, especially knowing that Baltimore is your week one opponent, and that's going to have massive implications for AFC seeding.
I think you need to get snaps in the preseason. Do I think you need to get a lot? No, but you need to get enough, and they need to be very, very scripted. For years, it's always been game 3, right? You get the starters the whole first half. You get them the first series of the second half. If they're not doing well, the coach is upset. They put them in another series or whatever, and then they sit them on the bench, right? And then they're non-existent week 4. I think that I'm more along the lines of a little bit as far as week 2, maybe a little more week 3, and maybe a little bit 4. We tend to sit everybody the last one. I'd like a little bit, at least make sure guys are engaged. They got to get their heart rates up a little bit, have a little bit of stress to be able to, because they know they have to go out and perform a little bit. As we see, you're protecting play, because the theory is we don't want to get guys hurt. Hell, we get more guys hurt not even in preseason games than we do in preseason games. To me, when you're locked into play and you've got all the pads on and you're all taped up, you're much more in tune to not get hurt than maybe being a little nonchalant in practice. So I think you're safer in a preseason game in a much more controlled environment than maybe, practice. And we're seeing that now. It's proven.
Yeah. It'll be the Giants in the first preseason game. That's where the backup quarterback conversation and competition, I should say, really starts. Mike White versus Mitch Trubisky. Joe, you just finished up a weekend at St. John Fish. Did you come away with an impression about who might be leading that race, if anybody?
Let's just hope that Josh Allen maintains his status as the most durable quarterback in the NFL. I thought, man, both have severe limitations. Mike White has heavy feet, man. You remember like Matt Ryan trying to drop back with those cinder blocks on his feet, man? He looks like that. But he's a quicker processor and I think he throws a more accurate football than Mitch Trubisky. Now, Mitch Trubisky certainly gives you an athleticism component, and I think he's got a little bit more arm talent, but the processing is slow and the ball placement is bad. So what pick your poison. You get $1 million in cap space if you go with Mike White, but I think it's got to play itself out. I think the preseason, it's probably one of the biggest storylines of this preseason for the Bills is watching these two guys play and figure out which one can run the offense better, because they got to decide on who this QB2 is. And hopefully there's something inspiring that happens this preseason about, what these guys can offer. But for me, Mike White's a little ahead. That's not predictive. That's just based on my own observations.
I look at when you look at, are we still talking about the quarterback, or we just any battle in Canada?
Any battle, sure, but yeah.
Okay, I'll talk about quarterback first. I like Trubisky because I think that backup quarterback has to have an aspect of being able to make plays with his feet. I just really do. I talked about this before, because no matter how prepared a backup quarterback is, When you're looking at reps during the week, Josh Allen's getting 95% of the reps. The backup quarterback gets 1 or 2, 3 maybe each segment. They don't get very much. So to come in and be a viable option to win if your starter gets hurt, you've got to be able to ad-lib and run and make plays. That's why I like Trubisky more so than White. Now, I love the processing of White because I think, it's funny. If you could take the processing of White and put it with the athleticism of Trubisky, you'd have a Reese's peanut butter cup, right?
Yeah.
Chocolate and peanut butter mix, and we got this great thing because we all know how we block pass pro, and so you need to have escapability, but you also need to be able to process it to be able to get out quick. So, there's positives and negatives, but I just like Trubisky because I like that athletic side of it.
Drop us a like, subscribe to the channel, and get us a comment as well before we get out of here. When we get some comments in, and I've got to bring up a question for you guys both here on it's a bit of a wrap up to the James Cook, even though this thing is far from wrapped up. So I had somebody today on our show on WGR in Buffalo write to me in the chat and say, I'm calling in. And then he called in to talk about it. We'll bring that up when we return. So more coming up here on the Bill Squad show. Jeremy White, Joe Marino, Jerry Ostroski here on the Bill Squad show. Time for a couple of your comments, your questions. You want to throw some stuff at us, we'll kick it around before we get out of here. So I had a guy talk about the James Cook thing to me in the YouTube chat on our WGR stream. And then he said, I'm calling in. And he called in. And he took issue with something that I suggested, and Jerry, I feel like I'm leaning on you here for this take, which is almost universally, players will not get mad at players in the contract dispute. Almost, there might be the occasional, hey, what are you doing? It's time to get to camp or it's time to get to the season. But am I wrong? Or is that almost a universal rule?
No, I think it's a universal rule. And if things are talked about, they're usually talked about behind closed doors. If anybody in that locker room said anything, it would have to be one of two people. One would be Josh Allen. The other one would be Deion Dawkins. I think those are the viable. Those are the visible. Those are the two big dogs when in that locker room. And if you hear anything from anybody, it would be, to me anyway, would be one of those two guys. And really nobody else needs to comment on it if you want to be perfectly honest. But no, I mean, I think this is a situation where, James did come to camp. He did practice. Now this last couple of days he sat out. They've talked to James. Josh Allen's talked to James. Deion's talked to James. They know where his mind is. They know where his heart is. They know what's going on. And ultimately, when you get down to this and the very bare necessities of all of this, you are playing the game of football to make money. Everybody in that room is playing to make money. You want to win championships as well. But when it comes down to it, that's your livelihood. And most of the people in that room understand it. And while you might not agree with it, there's a lot of things in professional athletics that aren't conducive to real life or family life. I mean, there's ego, there's selfishness, there's a whole lot of these things, and there's pride and there's everything else. But that's some of the tools you need to survive in that pressure cooker known as pro sports. And no, I think that those guys have probably talked behind the scenes. I don't think James has done anything without, at least talking to one or two of those guys, and they'll be fine with it. But no, you're not going to – you get the occasional guy that comes out and says something, but most of the times they're speaking out of place. I mean, we all understand negotiations. They're not easy all the time. Some of them are cut and dry. Some of them aren't. And you got to do what you feel is best for you.
A couple comments here. Let's get to a couple more. One injury we did not talk about, gentlemen, and we can do this, and that's on Tyler Bass. How concerning is it that Tyler Bass, a comment that somebody made, and I'm trying to find the comment for you, but how concerned should we be? Here we go, David. Tyler Bass, who's out there to possibly fill in should he not be able to go? Not a lot out there to fill in, that's for sure. But, Bass coming off a year where he battled, maybe not injury, but he battled, and he made it through, and here he is again, and the general pelvis, whatever it is, the injury, is he a lot like any other player? The longer it goes, the more concern?
Let me add something. I know, Jerry, you're chomping at the bit here. I can tell. Tyler Bass at the Blue Red on Friday night, he was actually in uniform, and he didn't kick like full speed, but he did do like one plant and kick. So he was doing some level of kicking on Friday night. And the Bills have not worked out a kicker yet. When they start working out kickers, that's when I'm going to get concerned.
No, I agree with that. But the thing about a pelvic area injury, and I would like to know what it is. I mean, there's something called a sports hernia that's very concerning to me, and I'm hoping that's not what it is. It's a pelvic wall, a muscle tear in that groin pelvic girdle area that's pretty debilitating. If they aren't trying out kickers yet, that's why I kind of hopefully lean that it's not that. But if this is something he can't work through, I mean, if you can't plant and you can't kick or swing your leg, that you don't fake that. You don't tape up you know what I'm saying? You don't tape up a pelvic area. You don't shoot up a pelvic area. You don't most of the times that you're going in and getting some sort of surgery after the season. So position players, it's extremely painful and they can grit through it and get through a season. For a kicker, I think it would be damn near impossible. So I'm hoping it's not the case. But I agree with Joe. If we start seeing kickers coming in, then it's time to be concerned.
Comment here from Ann about the James Cook thing. I think Cook's agent is aggravating the situation, not Cook himself.
I disagree. I disagree completely with that. I think there's a lot of rogue activity going on from James Cook. There's no agent that would be advising this behavior. I think there's different voices in James Cook's ear, and I think he needs to listen a lot more to his agent than those other people.
We talked about it earlier. I think there's no coincidence that this all of a sudden happened right after the Micah Parsons fiasco that is going on down in Dallas. So I think he does have people in his ear. I agree. Agents, because here's the thing you don't understand. The agent's the guy that has to talk to the general manager.
Yeah.
So do you think that he wants to take that call from Brandon Beane? I mean, that's like when you're a kid, and your dad comes in and says, look, we've only got a couple rules. One of them is don't aggravate your mother, because when you aggravate your mother, I got to hear about it. And I don't want to hear about it when I come home. I want to eat dinner, read the newspaper, watch TV, and have a beer. I don't want to have to deal with you. And that's why you have to look at this. These agents don't want to do, because he's the one that's got to talk to Beane, not James Cook.
Jeremy, in your interview with Beane this morning, didn't he have some high praise for Keon Coleman's agent and how they're developing a good relationship? That came to my mind when Jerry started talking about that, and I just wonder a little bit about Cook's, who he's listening to. I don't think it's his agent.
Yeah.
Well, the funny part about that was when he said that we're analyzing Keon Coleman on the field, and I got his agent called me saying Keon needs to work on this and he needs to do that. It's like another coach, right? Almost like a dad figure. So yeah, that was a very good segment.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times you might want to think that an agent is pulling the strings, and that does happen, right, Jerry? I mean, you'd have spots where agents are pushing you a certain direction, but they do work for you. People have also made the connection that maybe James Cook is kind of listening to his brother Dalvin, who of course, had a holdout / hold in. And whenever people point that out, I like to point out Dalvin Cook, he did win. His career went the way that running backs' careers tend to go. Got a big contract, didn't play to the end of it, and was gone from the league in like a year and a half. But he got the $63 million or whatever he needed. So that's why you do it. And if you're Dalvin Cook advising your younger brother James, even if it's ugly, even if it's messy, you might approach it that way. Like, listen, this league will kick you out in a month if you're injured, if you lose a step. So whatever you've got to do to get the bag, that is what he did. I just like to point out that Dalvin Cook, for better or for worse, he faded away, but he won. Dalvin Cook did against the Vikings.
It's a great point, because like I said, the other, what I said earlier, the other part, one part that's hard for James Cook as far as his negotiation is they've got Josh Allen, right? So even if we don't have James Cook, Josh will figure out a way. I never thought of that until you just brought it up, and that's a great point. There's history there, right? There's genetic history. His brother did this and then vanished.
But he got paid.
Remember his free agent tour, though? He's in Miami. Was it the Jets?
Right.
Up in Baltimore. His second go around was not quite as kind.
He got paid and then vanished.
Yep.
And so don't think that's
we're out of order here.
Right.
You got to get paid first, James, then vanish.
One question before we go. This is my little comment. All right. You're both I've made you are Jerry Jones. You are the GM of the Cowboys right now. What is the proper price to actually say yes to a trade for Micah Parsons because it's big. Bills fans, we had a lot of fun talking about Myles Garrett. He's 29. TJ Watt's 31. Micah Parsons is 26. So what is the appropriate price?
2 1s, a 2, a 3, and a player. A reasonable, like, young defensive end. So if it was the Bills, for it to be the Bills, I'd say I want your next 2 first-round picks. And since you're the Bills and you're going to be picking late, I want your next 2 second-round picks, and I want A.J. Epinesa.
Well, first things first, if I'm Jerry Jones and I trade Micah Parsons, I fire myself the next morning.
Well, listen, I didn't know that was on the menu because you're right about that.
The other part of it is this, Joe, and I know we don't got much time, but think about this, and we're locked up into this. One player's making the difference, and we're going to win the Super Bowl off of one player. Do we really play a scheme that fits the best attributes of Micah Parsons?
I'll say this. I said this about Lamar Jackson, Jerry, when Lamar Jackson was coming out of Louisville. I said, if your offensive scheme can't make it work with Lamar Jackson, then your offensive scheme sucks. Like, you got to then you're not a good coach.
Okay.
So I agree. No, it's not a perfect scheme fit. There's no doubt about it. But if you can't make that work with what that guy's proven,
well,
go take a dip in Lake Erie.
The one thing that excited me was that it would give you a chance to hop in and out of 4-2-5 and 4-3 without taking anybody off the field. You could bring another lineman in, obviously, but Micah does have that experience of playing linebacker, and maybe he's the third linebacker on some stuff because I get a little – I'm not so sure that he lines up in the outside as an end and just stuffs the run all the time. I think the Bills had a lot of success going right at him when they played him.
Yeah. Well, that and they played that safety. I keep forgetting his name. 14 or whatever his number was. The safety. You're playing him as like a strong side linebacker, and the Bills just said, where's Waldo? And we're running at that guy, and it looked real goofy.
Right. But I agree with what you're saying. But to just mortgage the future of the franchise for one player. I could see if it was, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Josh Allen, it was a quarterback. I have a hard time doing that with just any other position.
So, Jerry, you're in town this week. You're coming to camp?
We'll be in tomorrow afternoon, not leaving until the following Tuesday. So we'll be at camp on Wednesday, preseason game on Saturday. Looking forward to it.
Very good. Joe was just in town, man of the people. He and I were out with Patrick Moran for an appearance. Man, signing books, pictures with babies. I mean, The
only thing I needed was Jerry Ostroski with me because how many people love the Bills squad? Where's Jerry?
Well, I'll come up next year when you guys go because I need to finally be treated like a VIP in Buffalo. And if I'm with Joe, I'll get treated like a VIP.
That's right.
Listen,
that's right.
I started 100 games for the Bills,
I just want to be your right hand. Like I noticed you had a business manager with you on the trip. So
yeah, my business manager, Jake.
I'll be security. He can be
the good thing about you, Jerry, is you're versatile, right? That's the one thing we know about Jerry. Versatile. Whatever we need him to do, he'll do it.
I'll run security. He can run the business side of it. You answer the questions will be great.
We are also getting onto the portion of this show. We're going to start doing like post games and wrapping up some preseason games. So stay tuned. We'll keep everybody updated on the schedule and how we're going to juggle all that and do that all throughout the week. With the Bills' first preseason game is on the way Saturday against the Giants. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. To be continued on the James Cook saga. We will we'll keep paying attention to it and see what's going on. Till next time, go Bills.
Go Bills.
Much love. Go Bills.